Helps a bit, right button. I think the first thing to say is Happy New Year to everybody. Welcome to this rather unexpected meeting. We'll do the usual bits first, which are there are no planned fire drills tonight. If there is a fire, please use the fire escape to the left. And please avoid using the lifts if possible. If there's anybody there that needs support, could you please support them down the stairs? If you've got a mobile phone, I'm just saying that, and I'm thinking mine's turned on. Could you please turn it to silent or off now, please? Except mine. So the first thing is to accept any apologies. And we have apologies. Councillor Stevens.
Yeah, Councillor Karen Lucioni.
We also have apologies from the people.
Thank you, Chair.
Andre,
Councillor Laura Peacey Wilcox, who is out of the country.
very much. Councillor Henry, we've already said. Anybody else? Councillor Quigley as well. Okay, thank you very much for that. Declarations of interest. Do we have any? Okay, thank you. Okay, so just before we start tonight, oh yes, sorry, minutes. Help, yes. To approve the minutes of the last meeting. Does anybody have any amendments or? Go ahead, Councillor.
No, Chair, should it say, it said the minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of September? It says in it, should it be November?
Yeah.
Oh, that's on the old minutes. Sorry, I'm getting confused reading it. Thank you.
It's okay. Thank you for the clarification. That's what we're here for. Councillor Jarman has also asked for an amendment.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've sent it in advance, so hopefully you've seen it, and I don't know if it's been distributed or what the process was, but it's there.
Do you want to read that out or not, or are you happy just to, in order to?
For you to do so, Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. I can read that out for you. That's not a problem. Councillor Jarman has asked for a proposed revision to the section of the minutes which refer to the question that he asked the leader, with the proposed revision to be as follows. Councillor C. Jarman asked if the leader would admit that he did not send an email to statutory officers to provide councillors financial information requested, and renew 7 the direction for 2025-26 budget. The leader replied, absolutely not, and added that Councillor Jarman was in receipt of a copy of the email, which Councillor Jarman refused. The change is in the last sentence of the minutes, which in your version simply reads, the leader stated that Councillor Jarman was in receipt of a copy of the email.
So we have to remember that the, generally speaking, that the records if you wish to change this, what I have to do is I have to ask the council members if they're happy to change that to that, in order to vote on that. That's what I have to do in order to change it.
I'm very happy for that, Chair. It's as per the recording in any case.
You're happy to vote to change it?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So we just move straight to the vote then. So, somebody needs to second that today or not? Yeah, somebody needs to second that. We've got a seconder for that. Thank you, councillor Spinks. All those in favour of changing the wording, please show your hands. Okay. Yes, please. Can you count, please? If you just hold your hands up a second, we'll need to do a count.
1, 2, 3, 5, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13,
13. Those against? And abstentions?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Chairman.
Thank you very much. That is so recorded. I'm afraid that change can't be made, councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It is as on the recording anyway.
Raise a point of order and just make a comment, if I may.
If it's a point of order.
I hope, well, it is a point of order, but it's trying to assist. The problem, if the minutes aren't accurate in relation to the recording, is that often, and indeed in the judicial review for Westacre, the official record was the minutes, strangely enough, and not the tape. Now, if the minutes therefore are wrong, I don't know if they are specifically in this case, but then that is could potentially be a very serious consequence one way or the other.
Okay, so I hear what you're saying, but the chamber has already voted to say thank you, but no thank you.
I'm not suggesting
no.
you should go back on
No.
the vote. I just
I hear what you say,
mark it down
councillor.
for the future.
Yeah, thank you very much. I do hear what you say, and it's been accepted by councillor Jarman as well. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. Okay. Right.
Chair, we still need to agree the minutes.
My apologies. Yes, sorry, I got distracted there. Can we please, so we've got, quite rightly so, otherwise I would have moved on. Okay, yeah. So let's, those in favour of the minutes, please vote now. It looks like we may need to count. Yes, we'll have to count, please. Can you show your hands, please? Thank you. 25. So that is carried anyway. Thank you. I think I do need to point out, I need to give my vote of thanks to the officers of this council, because as you will be aware, this extraordinary meeting came in at a very, very late stage. And the staff have worked incredibly well. As you can see, we've only got Simon here this evening, where normally we would have more officers. So we may need to take our time in order to do that and to recognise actually, and I will say, extraordinary meetings should only be used as a last resort for any meetings that we actually hold. And I am absolutely dismayed at the timing of our government in bringing this forward now, which has caused us to have an extraordinary meeting. We all know that when we rush things, we make mistakes. We all know that. That's history tells us that. And I'm absolutely besides myself as the chairman about what government has done in imposing this at the busiest time of the year, when our officers are busy preparing proper budget statements as they should be. And so I am very angry that we are having to use an extraordinary meeting tonight in order to carry this forward. Having said that, this is where we are. It was the only way that we could ensure that all councillors could have a say in this matter to one degree or another. So we are where we are. I've said what I've got to say about it, and I've written to the Minister complaining about the timescales on this, because we could have done this much more professionally, without the tension, and remembering that, you know, Christmas is about goodwill to all people and looking after our health and well-being, and meanwhile our officers have had to work along with some of you as well. That is completely out of order by government. So I've said my bit about that. What we need to do now is I'm going to ask, before we move to the public questions, there's just a little bit of legal explanation that's required from our monitoring officer, just to help people this evening understand what this process is. But I will say to everybody, this meeting is about one issue and one issue only tonight. It is a single issue matter about devolution. Okay. And therefore we cannot take questions about anything other than devolution. Okay. So Francis, could you just clarify, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. This meeting is like an initial meeting for council's will to be shared with cabinet, essentially. And the formal decision making for this process is cabinet. And that's, I'm not going into detail about that, but that's just the way the law is. So cabinet are the decision maker. And Chairman, what I did was I did provide some advice to cabinet members in terms of their involvement and engagement in this process. And basically what members of cabinet can do is that they can participate, they can vote. That's a personal choice because they have a democratic mandate to do so. However, it's their personal choice whether they participate, whether they vote or whether they abstain. That's a personal political decision for them. What I did advise them is that if they do speak, they do vote, that they've got to be careful what they say, because they have to bear in mind that they are the decision makers in the main issue. So there's this concept of predetermination. And if they demonstrate in this meeting that they have made up their minds in the issue, then it could put the cabinet decision at risk. So I've given cabinet that advice, and clearly they need to decide how they want to personally participate in this debate and this process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we did that to try and be clear about the explanation so that people understand why questions might or might not be answered if directed into cabinet members. So before we move on to public question time, I want to come to council again, because again the papers went out so very quickly at the beginning. I would want to propose to move the members' questions from the end of the evening immediately following the public question time. And the reason being is there's no point in asking any questions about this single issue tonight after we have made the decision. Okay, so we will move the questions section up, which is 30 minutes to ask questions, forward with your will. Of course, it has to be your agreement to do so that you can ask questions. Then we will move on to the debate, which is a debate operated in the usual way with our 3 minutes and our responses. Any questions that come out through that particular format will be dealt with in the usual way and answered by the, in this case, it would be Councillor Jordan at the end, okay, as the substantive mover. Okay, is that all? So I need to propose that, and I need a seconder. Thank you very much, Councillor Brady, for seconding that. Can I have a show of?
Sorry, can I just raise a point of order? You mentioned decision. It's my understanding it's a recommendation tonight
It's a
of full council,
Yeah.
not a decision.
It's a decision about the recommendation, which is what I'm referring to.
I think we do need to be clear.
No, well, I am clear, and thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you, Chair.
It's a decision about the recommendation. Yep, okay. So just so that we're clear about that. The form of words, eh? The form of words. But thank you, councillor Andre, appreciate that. So could I, so we've been seconded, can we move to a vote for people to agree that or not?
Chair, point of order. You don't need to put this to the vote. You are the chair. It's up to you how you order the agenda. You have absolute authority. You're a dictator. Thank you.
I've been called that before, not dictator, but well, I've been called that. So, okay, we'll just go to that straightforward. Is everybody happy with that? Looks okay. So that's what we'll do. So now we finally move on, and I want to say to you that we are going to, the clock is ticking. We are going to stop at the 9 o'clock cutoff, which is the 3 hours, okay? We are going to do that. I had hoped to do it in 2 hours, but we're not going to get that, are we? So, members of the public, can I ask you to be concise? We've got some written questions if you do want to ask a question. We're not going to take any long preambles. I will cut you off because we just don't have time to do that. But we have 5 written questions which must be dealt with first. And I ask our chief executive if she can read the first one and we'll go from there.
Chair, quick point of order. We haven't had the declarations of interest.
We have taken the
Did we?
declarations.
Okay, sorry, apologise.
Don't worry. We all make
Thought I'd chuck in a
mistakes.
point of order.
This is live. This is live.
Can I make a suggestion that if the person is present who's asked the question, that they read the question themselves so that we can identify who they are?
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
absolutely, that's what we were gonna do. So we've got a question from a Mr. Cookrook. Goocrock. My apologies. Is Mr. Goocrock there? I apologise, Mr. Goocrock. My reading is not always what it should be.
That's fine. It's Brewcock actually, but don't worry, everybody says it wrong. Right, my question is, can the decision on postponing the May elections be postponed so the electorate on the island can have details on what is being discussed and possible alternatives explored? As my biggest fear is that the island would be woefully underrepresented in this new model and potentially lose out much needed funding for the island.
Thank you for your question. Do you want to go or the monitoring officer? Chair, okay. Mr. Jordan to answer.
Thank you, Chair. And our response is that the council is not able to postpone the decision as it results from a direct request for government for a response by the 10th of January 2025. I would stress that at this stage, there are no decisions being made that tie the island to any specific proposal, and that for the island to be part of either a devolution arrangement or local government reorganisation would require public consultation and a formal decision by the council. That's our reply.
So the next question is from, if they're here, Mr. Turan. Do we have anybody in the? No, we don't. So I go over to the chief exec.
Thank you, Chair. The question from Ms F Turan to the leader is as follows. The press releases and comments by Councillor Jordan and his group include references to meetings already held on amalgamation with other authorities, although none of the details of those discussions on our behalf or the results have been made public. Bearing in mind that most people here are not overly interested in benefits to Westminster government or to Hampshire or Portsmouth, and that the white paper reserves transport, housing and infrastructure to a mainland mayor, what additional funding and benefits would this devolution provide specifically to our island and when?
And over to the leader to respond, please.
Thank you, Chair. And our reply is that devolution would provide for the creation of a strategic authority with powers and direct funding from government in line with the framework of powers set out in the government white paper. The benefit for this for the island is that it has the potential to provide access to funding for economic investment which would not otherwise be available for the area, to the timetable that is currently set out by government. If we were to agree part of the devolution priority programme, that funding could be available as early as next year. That's our reply.
Thank you for your response. And Mrs. J. Newell? No? Kate?
Thank you, Chair. The written question from Mrs Jane Newell to the leader is as follows. In the council paper on devolution, it records that the Isle of Wight Council application for acceptance onto the devolution priority programme is conditional. What are the conditional factors and the weighting to be given to each? And what would be the consequences to the Isle of Wight if the application were not accepted?
Thank you.
Our reply is that the government has made it clear that those authorities that are asking to be considered for the devolution priority programme need to set out that they are ready for taking forward devolution and they want to do so at pace. That's our reply.
Thank you very much, Leader. Do we have a Miss A. Mantell? Nope.
Thank you, Chair. The written question from Ms Kay Mantle to the leader is as follows. Your available options at items 42 to 46 show that the only other option other than following the path toward a devolution priority programme is to do nothing. Is it correct that there are no other options available to the Isle of Wight? And if there are other options, what are they and why are they not considered in the papers?
And over to you, Leader.
Thank you, Chair, again. And our reply is that devolution for all areas of England is a clear government priority. Minister has asked the council to consider whether it wishes to continue discussions on devolution by being part of the devolution priority programme. The options available in this instance are to be part of that programme or not to be part of that programme. That's our reply, Chair.
Thank you very much. That's the end of the written questions. Oh, sorry. Yes, we do have another one. Apologies. Sorry. Oh, yeah. Mr. H. Jenkins.
Thank you,
No.
Chair. The written question from Mr H Jenkins to the leader is as follows. Item 16 in your briefing paper on the website states, Appendix 1 sets out a summary of the key parts of the devolution white paper and the benefits of devolution. In order to provide a balanced report to councillors and so that they can have a fully informed debate and decision, what are the disadvantages of this proposed devolution and where are they set out for the public and councillors alike?
Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Chair. Our reply is that in simple terms, the option of not moving forward with devolution maintains the status quo for funding and investment for the island. The government have set out the framework for devolution and additional funding will flow to areas with devolution arrangements. There is no commitment from government that additional funding will be provided for strategic investment in areas where there is no devolution arrangement, or at best, if any funding is available, areas will have to compete for funding, which is the position that we are currently in. That's our reply, Chair.
Thank you very much. So now, do we have any more written questions? Okay. So we now go to the public gallery. Is there anybody in the gallery who would like to ask a question? So Mr. Stephen Parks, if you'd like to.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, councillors and cabinet members. Yes, you know, I'm councillor for Shanklin and also now Lake as well, Bay area. Obviously, many of us living here on the island, working, are very concerned about this.
I echo your sentiments, Mr. Chairman, about the government rushing this through, putting us all and yourselves under pressure of time when you were already on a busy agenda. We were promised levelling up from the previous government. We were promised funding. That still hadn't come to fruition. It's not a level playing field for us to amalgamate with the likes of Winchester, Portsmouth, Southampton, whilst we recognise there would be advantages, NHS, education, transport, travel. Are they saying, the government, they're going to invest in the Isle of Wight and recognise our unique circumstances and our special needs? And could yourselves assure us tonight, Mr. Chairman, in Cabinet tomorrow, that we will have representation, strong representation, if there is a new super council? 3 or 4 or however many few Isle of Wight councillors is not enough. We need a proper discussion focused on the needs of the Isle of Wight for this to go forward.
Thank you very much for that. We've got the question there, which is what matters. Would you like to answer?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Parks. And that was quite a long question. So, and I thought it was going to be short, so I didn't take notes. But I'll have a go at covering all of those points you made. But the key point, and there is an enormous amount of confusion coupled with the concerns over speed. But the obvious, it's not obvious. The key point to make is that devolution is not amalgamation, and devolution does not entail this council being amalgamated with any other council. That's what devolution is, and that is part of the confusion that people have because it is being conflated with local government reorganisation, which is attempting and will deliver by this government unitary councils right across the country. Now, as we know, the Isle of Wight is already a unitary authority. Therefore, we do not have to convert to a unitary authority. And so the devolution ask is for a strategic partnership for additional powers to be granted from Westminster to our local area, and with those powers, additional substantial grant funding over a substantial period of time, potentially 30 years. Local government reorganisation is different, and there are no plans for this authority, for the Isle of Wight Council, to be amalgamated with any other authority. I hope that's quite helpful to you, Mr. Parks.
Yes, thank you very much.
Have you got a supplementary? Very briefly, please.
Well, the question is supplementary. Will the structure of this council then remain as, for example, 39 councillors, and how will we be represented on a super council on the mainland?
Right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. It's a very good question. This council will remain as is in the structure it is. In May this year, it will move to a committee system and it will remain with the councillors that are elected to be on that committee system. In terms of the devolved area, the devolution, which incorporates 4 authorities: Hampshire, Southampton, Portsmouth and the Isle of Wight, there will be a strategic board of 4 leaders and 1 mayor. Each of those leaders and that mayor will have a single vote on that board, and no vote will be carried any weight further than any other vote. And the mayor's vote will need the approval of the leaders for any proposal that the mayor makes to be carried. Therefore, this authority in a devolution deal will have equal power and equal rights and equal votes on the devolved powers arrangement. I hope that's helpful, Mr. Parks.
Mr Parks.
Thank you. Can I
No,
just
no.
ask, how is it equal if it's
Sorry, Mr Parks, I'm
12
sorry.
and 4?
I'm sorry, Mr Parks.
Yeah.
Mr Parks, I'm sorry. You
okay.
cannot ask another question. Thank you. We have another oral question. It's very much appreciated, by the way, Mr Parks, your questions. It's just that we need to make sure that everybody gets and will follow the rules. Thank you. Councillor Paling.
Thank you, Chairman. My first question was actually answered already by Councillor Jordan, which was reiterating that much of the media article recently have been very inaccurate in the sense that we are conflating local government reorganisation and devolution, which I think is actually a fault of the government's own paperwork. So my question is now going to go on to my supplementary, which was, can the leader or chief executive please provide an update on the situation of town, parish and community councils? If this were to go forward with cabinet, town and parish councils too are due elections in May. We are currently on the same election cycle as yourselves. Has there been any conversations with government as to whether town and parish councils will be postponed as well, or will they go ahead? Thank you.
Yeah, so normally we wouldn't ask a question of the chief executive directly, but I'm happy if Councillor Jordan will want the chief executive to answer.
I can answer. It's just that our chief exec has more up-to-date detailed information. The answer that we have from government on that, those questions have been asked, of course, is that firstly, by-elections, let me just deal with that first. Any by-elections can take place after May. So in this council, if there are resignations or councillors leave for whatever reason, a by-election can be held. In terms of town and parish councils, and I note there's an amendment that addresses this later this evening, town and parish councils elections can go ahead.
So,
Right. Sorry, Chair.
Chair, always, please.
Sorry, Chair. Councillor Jordan, I think it was a bit, you said that by-elections can happen after May. Do you mean, no, don't you mean that by-elections can happen if called now?
No, because we are under the existing rules of resignation
Yeah.
6 months prior to an election.
Yes, so once this is signed, does it mean that if someone has resigned, that once this is signed and we hold the by-elections and the elections, and they won't happen in May 2025, that by-elections?
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to stop this because we're moving into questions, and that's one of the questions that could be brought forward in the questions. Councillor Brodie, point of order.
Chair, I'd like to be helpful because I think it's important this is clear, and I think Councillor Jordan made the mistake of assuming that the elections that are due in May will be postponed. That's not guaranteed at all. Can I just say, if they're not postponed, there are no by-elections on this council because we're within 6 months, so the current vacancy cannot be filled, and the town and parish council elections will continue in May. If they are postponed, then the Isle of Wight council vacancy that's current will be allowed to be filled. That's the central rural ward, and any other wards where a councillor subsequently decides to retire after their 4 years rather than doing an extra year. What I am proposing later on is if we do go for the postponement, we also request a postponement for town, parish and community councils because they haven't had the opportunity to consider this yet.
Yeah.
So I'm making a presumption about that as a community councillor that they would probably want to have their elections on the same day as whenever the Isle of Wight council elections are, because it saves costs apart from anything else.
Okay.
I hope that's helpful, Chair.
Yeah, it is helpful. I'm just trying to make sure that I follow the agreed rules. That's the, so
Could I
thank you
use my
very much.
Sorry, could I
Okay,
use my
your supplementary question.
I think it was to reiterate Jeff's point there. As a town councillor myself, I think it's important for voter turnout and political engagement that we have the election at the same time. We already have a really low voter turnout, and actually it's important that we engage people in that process. However, as you are proposing potentially to defer your elections, I, as a town councillor, would support that.
Okay.
Thank you. The deferment of both at the same time, if it were to happen.
Thank you very much for your question. Are there any more questions from the gallery? We just have a few minutes left. Okay, it doesn't look like there is, so that's the end of that particular section. So having agreed to move the agenda around, we now move to members' questions. We have 30 minutes on this. I see that Councillor Robertson has indicated immediately. So if I can just reiterate, this is a members' questions and answer, and then we'll have the debate afterwards, which is a different, slightly different process. Okay? Please ask your question.
Thank you, Chair. Could I ask if the leader or anyone else on behalf of the Isle of Wight Council has asked the government if it would be at least possible to enter a negotiation for a mayor for the Isle of Wight only? Has that been asked of government?
Would the chair like to ask? Sorry, would the leader like to ask?
Those discussions have been had, Joe, and there have been suggestions that potentially, still potential, because we're not haven't decided what we're doing. We're dependent on government making decisions as well. A suggestion that if that were not possible, a deputy mayor for the Isle of Wight might be possible. I think that the key to this is that once you get into the discussions and negotiations with government about your devolution deal, those are precisely the issues that one would wish to deal with. And I think I'd use this opportunity to say is a good reason why the priority programme will offer that up sooner rather than later. Those discussions, that is.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Lilly.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you. You've actually answered one of the questions about that I wanted to ask about the deputy mayor. So thank you for that. I particularly want to bring up the strategic role of the mayoral and the fact of the issue of ferries, because it's very clearly in the white paper, it mentions buses and it mentions trains. We need in any documentation, and we should, you know, have it in the legislation of the white paper, that you have ferries. It's quite interesting in London, ferries are included in the transport network, and there is a clear peer-to-peer. And the issue of ferries is not just us, because there's a Gosport ferry and there's a High Southampton ferry. I would even put the floating bridge into the issue as well. That we do need, if we're going forward with this strategy, to actually resolve and link our transport into the mainland network. It used to be under British Rail and Sea-Link, it was one. So you went from Shanklin right through as a British Rail passenger.
Yeah,
we need to
I do need the
this
question.
back.
I do need the question.
The question is that going to be written in any agreement or change that the word ferry is with buses and trains?
Thank you, Michael. I can tell you that this authority in the autumn of last year entered an expression of interest with government for devolved powers, and accompanying that expression of interest was an ask of about 12 pages of how the four authorities saw their requirements for devolved powers for the area, for the region, and for each individual authority. I can tell you that in that document, cross-Solent transport was agreed by the four authority leaders and was entered into that document and presented to government as part of our ask. What I would say is that if and when the discussions with government begin, hopefully quickly rather than later, that those are exactly the key areas that we will be negotiating, whoever the we are, negotiating hard and strong with the government to ensure that we do get those powers in this area, in this region, that are important to us as an area and more importantly, important to us as an island. So the answer is, of course, Michael, yes.
Thank you very much. Councillor Drew?
Thank you, Chair. The leader made mention of substantial investments. Having looked through the white paper and indeed the report that we've been going over, I can't see any reference directly from government to substantial funding. The only thing that I could find in the white paper at section 3 is in relation to, quote, the scope of integrated settlements will be confirmed at each spending review on the basis of functional responsibilities. That, to me, reads as essentially saying that the more responsibilities an authority has at whatever level, that funding will go there. Not that it's necessarily additional funding, but simply that it will be funding to be discharged by that level of government, if that's at a mayoral strategic authority level. So my question is, given that in the report the only reference to funding is a PricewaterhouseCoopers report of 2020. I'm not sure I'd put much store in PricewaterhouseCoopers given that they're being investigated for fraud at the moment. So where exactly do you get the substantial funding from? Where is this something that's been said from government, or is this actually something I can read?
Okay, we've got the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Drew. The swift and quick answer is yes, there is something you can read. It's a report by government on existing devolution. I think the report is 23-24, but it might be 22-23. Forgive me if I have that wrong. I'm pretty sure it's 23-24. Google it. If you can't do that, I'll Google it and send that round. In that document, in that report by government, it identifies all of the existing devolved areas, their powers that have been granted, and the exact sums of money against those powers that have been given as additional funding and in terms of capital and revenue. They are substantial. My estimate would be for the Solent area devolution that negotiations with government would be starting at anything between 30 and 60 million pounds a year for 30 years. That would be my estimate. That's just an estimate. But if you look at that document, you will see that are the kinds of sums of money that are already being granted.
Councillor Drew. So first of all, we will ensure, I've asked the Chief Executive to make sure that that document is circulated to all, so we've all got copies of it. Or the link, yeah, at least, yeah. Councillor Drew, your supplement?
Just a very quick supplement. So presumably that level of funding, though, that would be shared obviously within the strategic authority. So we would get something like 8% of that, and that would also be at the discretion of politicians off of the islands. Is that right?
Yeah, that would be for the devolved area. I don't know where the 8% comes from, and there's 4 authorities, but 4 8% to 32. But I suspect it would be nearer 25% of the total area. But of course, well, 4 authorities. No, but
come on, through the chair, please. The leader is speaking.
Chair, I think if things are said that are wildly misleading, it might be worth a point.
You come to me.
Should I make a point?
You come to me. You don't just jump in, please. No, not at this point. We will allow the leader to respond and finish. I'm going to do it by the book. That's how it is.
Should I make a point of order, Chair?
I can't stop a point of order.
I would invite either you or the leader to clarify his suggestion that the Isle of Wight, with 8% of the population, might receive 25% of the money. Can you just clarify that that is not necessarily the position?
Yeah, sure. Because the governance of the devolved area hasn't been agreed, and some of those arrangements of funding are yet to be agreed. And so you could take that, Joe, I accept that. You could take the population as one way of, how should we put it, sharing out the booty. But there are other ways of doing it too, and those other ways will be discussed and are being discussed. So let's not necessarily assume that additional funding is per population head, although I accept it could be done that way, Joe.
Thank you very much, Leader, for your response there. Councillor Mosdale is next on the list.
Thank you. I understand that 10 years ago when we were discussing a Solent area devolution deal, that a figure was discussed of 22 million a year for a smaller area. I know Councillor Bacon was involved in that. I've been dealing quite closely with our PCC, who, as we know, the PCC powers will go under the mayoral system. So she has quite a vested interest in this. And I've been advised by her that it would bring circa about 50 million a year for Hampshire, that it doesn't actually mean that it has to be decided by a percentage. It actually be divided by need. Can we confirm that, please, rather than this calculation of it will be 8%? Would it not be that at the moment we are in incredibly financial dire situation, as was shown at corporate scrutiny last night? Could we have confirmation, please?
Thank you, Claire. Exactly so. Exactly so.
Thank you for that. I see hands going up. We are definitely on to Councillor Redrup next.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Jordan, can we get absolute clarity on whether postponing the elections is truly mandatory for joining the priority programme? Because reading the white paper, it doesn't really give that impression. Thank you.
Mandatory and evidence of mandatory, I'm afraid that government have done what they tend to do, which is make their shoulders in a slightly different angle. And for whatever reason, they've decided to transfer the responsibility of the ask of deferring elections to local authorities. But of course, they've at the same time tied an ask for priority programme into an ask for deferring the election by the 10th of January in the same letter by the four authorities. So on the one hand, they won't commit to agreeing that they will defer the elections, but they are suggesting that if you ask, they will defer the elections. In a meeting with the minister in December, he said to me that he was minded to lay down the legislation to defer elections. This is before the white paper was released. And then finally, of course, this council, there's another confusion, and thank you for the opportunity to explain this. This council cannot cancel or defer elections. That can only be done by government. And all we can do is ask of government. We are not guaranteed the priority programme or a deferment of elections just by asking. So I hope that clarifies that.
Thank you very much. We're getting quite a lot of good questions in here. Councillor Brodie.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Jordan, is it not the case that existing regional boards for strategic authorities around the country have different rules, different apportioning of funds, etc., and that will actually be down to the quality of the leader who is negotiating with the other leaders, how well the Isle of Wight is out of things? Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. That's precisely how I understand it's going to work. It will be leaders, the four leaders, and the quality of those leaders and their leadership on how the governance and other matters are decided. They're undecided. Government has made it extraordinarily clear that there is no template for devolution and that they are going to negotiate with those that wish to do so on a case-by-case basis. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you very much. I see we've still got 3 people at least. And where are we time-wise? Have we got time for all of those? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chair. Is the leader aware that Wiltshire, Northampton and West Northampton, as unitary authorities and as stated in the white paper, have requested that they do not have a delay to elections based on the fact that in the white paper it says that only if you are going through reorganisation is it something to look at in order to grease the wheels of a priority programme. And can we follow the example of Wiltshire, North Northampton and West Northampton in requesting that no delay to the elections?
Thank you.
Thank you. What government don't say is that they will only grant a delay of elections if you're doing reorganisation. They don't say that whatsoever. I'll read you what government say. They say alongside our objectives on devolution and subject to meeting the timetable outlined in this letter, I am minded to lay secondary legislation to postpone local council elections from May 25 to May 26. However, I will only do this where this will help the area to deliver both reorganisation and devolution to the most ambitious timeframe, either through the devolution priority programme or through reorganisation is necessary to unlock devolution or open up new devolution options. So that's what government are saying. They're not saying they are going to consider deferring elections purely on the basis of reorganisation.
Thank you for reading that, Leader. That's appreciated.
Supplementary, Chair?
So we now
Can I have a
have councillor,
supplementary?
like a secondary. Yes,
So,
sorry.
supplementary question, sorry. Is the leader aware that the priority programme is only going to be allowance for 10 of these deals at once in at least a 6-month period, and currently there are 12 in that queue already, therefore we will not be on the first tranche of priority?
Councillor Blake obviously has a fast track into the Prime Minister and the Minister. I've met the Minister 3 times. He has yet to quote me those numbers. He's yet to suggest those numbers. However, Councillor Blake may be right.
To that point, Angela Rayner did say it in public.
Councillor Blake may be right in terms of those areas queuing up for priority programme. And that's because it is a benefit to local areas to be on the priority programme. It follows from that the best thing this council and the 3 other councils forming the devolution and strategic partnership can do is put to government the most robust, committed and thorough application for the priority programme, so that we are considered along with any others that are attempting to get the priority programme. What we should not do is leave government in any doubt that we are committed or uncommitted by our actions in terms of making sure we are in a position in a council to deliver the priority programme if it were granted.
Thank you for that. We now move on to councillor Jarman.
Thank you. I'm obliged to the Leader for quoting communications from central government, and it's interesting that he's met with the Minister 3 times, although we've not seen reports of those. In the Minister's paper from Jim McMahon that was issued on the 16th of December, on the bottom of page 3, we've heard a great deal of mention of expressions of interest. But the statement by the Minister very clearly says, I will require a clear commitment to delivering both reorganisation and devolution to the most ambitious timeframe, with any request to delay council elections by Friday the 10th of January. The difference between a clear commitment and an expression of interest is considerable. It also links together the 2 components of reorganisation and devolution being required as declarations at the same time by the use of the word both. Is that correct?
That is correct. You read it from the Minister's letter. And also says, with any request to delay council elections, firmly placing deferment of council elections as part of a request for a priority programme. Of course, the timeframes, this is where some of the confusion has arisen, because government have decided to do devolution and local government reorganisation at the same time. However, they're doing it in different timeframes. And should this council ask for a priority programme, their requirement by government to produce their plans for reorganisation, and I'm using the word reorganisation in terms of how it is written in the letter, and not in terms of what our future intentions will be, which will be to convince government that we are an exception. If we are to ask for and achieve the priority programme, we do not have to provide our plan for reorganisation in brackets, exception, close brackets, until the autumn of this year. If we do not apply for the priority programme, therefore unsuccessful, since we haven't applied, we will be required by government to produce our plan for reorganisation, open bracket, exception, close bracket, by May 2025.
Thank you, Chair. Again. Yep.
So to be clear, is it the proposal of the leader that this full council is invited to indicate support for a clear commitment to delivering both reorganisation and devolution as requested in Jim McMahon's letter? Is that what is being asked of this full council this evening? Or, as indicated in the papers we've got, are we being asked to give merely an indication of interest? So are we meeting the conditions of this paper or not?
Thank you very much. Good point, councillor.
For some further clarity, what is being read to you, as I have read to you, is a letter from the minister on the 16th of December to the leaders. As with the white paper, as with this letter, this is a fast-moving issue, and there have been webinars, meetings with ministers, and a moving of the territory in certain ways and certain conditions as questions have been asked of government and the minister. So the answer to your question is, as I thought I made it clear, that if we apply for the priority programme, we have until the autumn of 2025 to provide for government our plans for reorganisation, open brackets, exception, close brackets. If we don't apply for the priority programme, we will have to provide to government by May of 2025 the plans for this council to reorganise, open brackets, exception, close brackets. I think that's as clear as I can make it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Point of order, that is not an answer to Councillor Jarman's question, and it is important, if I may say so, that answers are given and simply not speeches which don't answer the question.
It may well not be what you wished to hear, but it was a response.
It's not a response.
So thank you very much for that. It is Councillor Spink's turn.
So I will
Anyway.
raise a point of order now, that if we are not to receive specific answers to specific questions, we are wasting our time this evening. My question was not about the priority programme. It was about a specific reference in the minister's paper. The answer is a simple yes or no. Are we asked to do this or are we not asked to do it? It was not requiring a speech, and the answer was on a different topic.
I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. Would you want to respond or not?
Are we in the same meeting even? I mean, that sounded like a reply to the question. You asked me if we had to provide those plans. I have told you what we have to do.
No question about plans.
Well, That's what government have asked us to do about reorganisation. That is what we have been asked to do. So if we apply, shall I repeat this? Because it sounds like a reply to me.
Stop. We're going to be nice and calm. I appreciate the passions. I really do appreciate the passions, but we need to keep this meeting moving. There are other people who want to ask questions, and it is over to Councillor Spinks now.
Well, I was going to ask a question about the effects on planning, but it concerns me that we haven't had an answer to Councillor Jarman's question, and I'm going to try putting it another way to see if we can have an answer. And that is this, that in the letter makes it very clear, and you will be writing a response to this letter as determined by Cabinet tomorrow. Now, the letter makes it quite clear that in order to go on to the priority list, it makes it quite clear that this council has to make a clear commitment. I'm looking at third paragraph up from the bottom. This council would have to make a quote, a clear commitment to devolution and reorganisation, including a request from the councils whose election is to be postponed on Friday the 10th. So to get us on the list, the priority programme, you have to write and make a clear commitment to devolution and reorganisation.
You have to ask the question.
That is different to what the recommendations are, that you simply
please ask the question.
I am about to. That is different.
Well, no, we're going on and on and on, and there's other people. Please ask the question.
Will you be writing in respect of the reply to the letter of the 16th of December, expressing a clear commitment to devolution and reorganisation?
We, four leaders, it's addressed to leaders. It's not just addressed to me, it's addressed to leaders of the devolved area. We will be, particularly one of those areas is involved in reorganisation because they have district and borough councils. We will be writing, along with further guidance from the Minister and his team, that we wish to, if that's the decision we take, by the way, we will be writing under those circumstances to ask for the priority programme, and we will be
Come on, councillors, please. Well, yeah, councillors, please. We need to finish. We need to allow people to speak and finish.
And we will be
Please,
Chair, point of order. It's not a pointless exercise as far as I'm concerned. It might be to these student politicians sat here, but this is an entirely purposeful engagement, asking questions of the leader. I'm getting the answers that I want. They don't want, those who don't want to hear, don't hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's stop. Stop, please. I'm starting to get cross. We are going to manage this meeting properly. We are almost out of time. Councillor Outlaw, you've been waiting a long time, and I think that's probably about the last question. Sorry to everybody else. We're out of time.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask the lead. In answer to Councillor Drew's question, the leader suggested that a government paper on devolution from, he thought, not 2023 or 2024 referred to additional funding. Since July 2024, we've had a new government who have introduced the white paper that doesn't refer to additional funding. How, therefore, can the leader state with such confidence that devolution will result
in additional funding and not a dilution of current funding?
Because the report that was carried out demonstrates the levels of funding that follow the devolved powers in devolution areas. The change of government has changed pace on this, but not intent. This government is determined to deliver devolution across the country at a pace, which is why they have asked for authorities to apply for a priority route. What can I say more than that? The whole notion of devolution is to pass to local areas devolved powers and with that additional funding. The levels we don't know. I am trying to point you in directions of indicators from other areas that have devolved powers already, the kinds of levels of funding that have followed those devolved areas. Is that the level of funding for this area? I don't know.
Councillors, we have 3 questions left, and I think it is important that we do actually ask those questions. Would you allow those questions to be asked? You're happy for that? Because I think it's important that we do this. Sorry, I banged that a bit louder than I intended to do. So the next question is from Councillor Drew.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Brodie said, and I agree, that funding may be contingent on strong leadership. And I would certainly pay tribute to Councillor Jordan. I think he would be the sort of person who would be able to argue very vehemently. My concern is the only thing we have is the white paper. And the white paper says, and I quote, integrated settlements will have a single systematized approach to spending and a single streamlined overarching assurance framework coordinated by the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government. That to me seems like strong centralisation, and I think with regards to Tig's point, that essentially we have to brace this on the white paper. So what assurance has the leader had from ministers or the department in relation to this? Because to me it seems very strongly that we will lose a lot of control and potentially sell ourselves cheap. Thank you.
Again, Councillor Drew, I can point you in the direction of existing devolved areas to see how devolution works in those areas, the successes. There are some obvious ones, Manchester is one, and more recent devolved areas. And I believe there are 5 going to be approved this year. 5 devolved areas are key indicators of how this government is trying to push the devolution process across the country and the kinds of funding that it will apply to those devolved powers. If you ask me to comment on is devolution really devolution of powers or more central, I think that's for maybe another debate for another time, because devolution is going to happen. What we do have, and again, I suggest to you that it would be better under priority if we are successful, if we apply for it and we're successful, to have those negotiations, negotiate strongly for extensive powers and negotiate for funding, additional funding that matches those powers to deliver those powers.
Thank you. Just want to try to do, I'm sorry, I'm not going to give you a supplementary because we're already over time. It's Councillor Brading and then Councillor Brodie, and then that's this session completed. We've gone on longer.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your indulgence of a little bit of extra time. Mine's a very short question, actually, just for clarification. I've read bucket loads of paper, and the more I read, the more confused I get. And but then my question, a lot of things mentioned tonight about the elections in May. A lot of questions and comments in the gallery have been about that. So just for understanding, if Cabinet tomorrow votes to sign the expression of interest, if we are then accepted on a priority programme, government will then pass a law that means elections just can be suspended. So is that they tell us we have to, or is it our choice as to whether we suspend the elections? I think that'll be, and because in recommendations in the paper,
Yeah, thank
Then
you for the
so
question.
just a clarification, really.
Yeah, yeah.
So already Hampshire are going to, are asking to defer their elections. I believe it's Friday morning, but that's their intent to pass that motion through their cabinet on Friday morning and then join in the letter that has to go on Friday asking for deferment of the elections. Do you have to defer? No, but I'm sure in the debate that's coming, some of this will be teased out, that there are nuances, that there are benefits in doing so, that to demonstrate your commitment to government, that you are ready to deliver a priority program, some of those issues, because elections do delay things, because under electoral laws, as all of us know, there are things this council can and cannot do during an election period that make it difficult, if not impossible, to engage in matters that are not, as I think the term is, business as usual. So the period of the election would delay any attempt by this council to negotiate with government. Public consultations would be difficult, which government are going to carry out. And of course, we have a partnership with 3 other authorities that are keen, eager, ready and willing to go on the priority route, to the point where the other authority that holds elections this year, Hampshire, are going to ask for a deferment. I hope that's helpful, Paul.
And not least, Councillor Brodie.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps, Leader, you can help us kill the reorganisation red herring, which I see as an entire distraction. Have you been approached by any of the other 3 authorities regarding creating a larger unitary council? Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. I have had discussions with the other 3 leaders on an ongoing basis. I can tell you that the 3 other authorities are going to enlarge their own unitary authorities in another way without the Solent or the Isle of Wight in their plan. So Hampshire, Portsmouth and Southampton have district and borough councils, and they are going to reorganise with those district and borough councils. They are not intending or have not asked or we have not had any discussion that would lead to this council becoming part of a unitary authority with Hampshire, Southampton or Portsmouth. I hope that's helpful, Jeff.
Thank you. That is very helpful. Thank you.
So thank you, members, for your indulgence in that little bit of extra. We're going to take just 5 minutes now for a comfort break in order to, before we move on to the substantive. Thank you very much. Well, welcome back, everybody. As I have said before, 9 o'clock is the cut-off time for this. It's still a very, very long meeting. We've got quite a lot to do. So we now go into the debating bit, which is as what we've set out previously, which is our 3 minutes and for this. And we have to have the paper reported first. If it's a point of order. Okay, thank you. So I go over to the leader to introduce. It must be a point of order. Okay. Well, we haven't, no, come on, yeah, come on, we haven't got time, I appreciate that, yeah, last on the list now, I'm afraid. Okay, moving on quickly to leader, please present this report.
Thank you, Chair. Well, look, I really am not going to take very much of your time. Let's let us as councillors ask questions, debate, and give our views. But I'll just make a couple of quick points because some of the points I would have made have been answers to questions. But let's just remember this, please. We are in this position, as referred to earlier by the chair. We're in this position not because of this council or any councillor or any administration. We're in this position because government has decided to deliver devolution at a pace. When the chairman mentioned earlier his concern and dismay, we received that letter on the 16th of December. The leaders of two-tier authorities and other authorities, smaller unitaries around the country, we were given until the 10th of January to make a decision. In between the seasonal break of Christmas and New Year, with all that is required to set up meetings such as this and cabinet extraordinary meetings and come to a conclusion with our partners in Hampshire, Southampton and Portsmouth in 23 days. It's an extraordinary ask. And we are here tonight and we will be there tomorrow and in future, depending on what decisions are made, we can thank government, not this council. So that's the first thing. Second thing, just let me, and I mentioned it earlier, because of the confusion, there are two things running in parallel with different timeframes. One of them is devolution. Devolution is a strategic partnership. The other is local government reorganisation. And the two are not the same thing and are different and are being done at different timescales, as difficult as it is for some of our members to understand. Devolution could be done in the coming year if you are on the priority programme, and would, if you are on the priority programme and successfully negotiate your deal with government, could start as early as May 25, along with mayoral elections. If you're unsuccessful, it could be 26, 27 or 28 before those deals are negotiated with government. On reorganisation, there is a clause, a guideline in the white paper that gives exception to some of the guidelines of reorganisation into unitary authorities. The guidelines have given us a figure of 500,000, 500,000 as a guideline. That is a guideline and there is a plus or minus on that. It certainly isn't the upper limit. However, they have written and acknowledge and accept and realise that there can be exceptions to reorganisation into larger unitaries. A question at the end of members' question asked us whether we had negotiations with our near neighbours, and we haven't, and there are no plans to enlarge this unitary authority by amalgamation with Southampton, Portsmouth or Hampshire, or any other authority for that matter. And I believe that the water around this island, the Solent, is a good reason that we can convince government that this island is an exception. There are lots of other reasons we will build into that case, including the cost of delivering services and so on. So the two things are different. Reorganisation, we as an authority will argue strongly that the Isle of Wight Council remains as is. As it is today, this evening, it will remain as is moving forward. However, it would move forward, I hope, and it will do if this government delivers its intentions. It will move forward as is in a devolution arrangement with government. So the two are separate, two different timeframes. Devolution wants to be done, government wants it done this year for priority and years to come for non-priority. On reorganisation, depending on whether you are in a priority programme or not in the priority programme, the timeframes for that are different. As I tried to explain there, if I just finish this, Chair, because it's important to finish the point. If you're in the devolved area, government are not expecting your plan for reorganisation, stroke exception, until the autumn of this year. If you are not in the priority programme, government expects your plan for reorganisation, stroke exception by May this year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And I look to a seconder for that. Councillor Stevens is seconding that.
Yeah.
Sorry, do you want to reserve the right to speak?
Chair, can we just have clarity on, people are looking a little confused. I know what's happened, but what Councillor Jordan has proposed is the report and particularly the recommendations at paragraphs 7 to 10. That's what and that's what Councillor Stevens is second. Just for those who are looking a little confused.
Okay. It's now seconded. Yeah. So we now move on to debate that.
No. Now it's the opportunity for amendments.
Yes.
Before this, you start the clock, Simon, can I just clarify something with Councillor Jordan that he said? He said if we were accepted onto the priority programme, it would start in May 25. That's this year. That's not true. It's May 26.
Jeff, no, it would start in May 26. If I said May 25, that's an error. Apologies and thank you for that correction.
Okay, Chair. Thank you very much. And yeah, you've all got the revised amendment from me. Took me a while to get a final version. You've got that in front of you. Can I also offer my thanks to the staff who've had to engage with this over the seasonal period, and also to you, Chair, and the leader for agreeing to an extraordinary meeting where we can make recommendations to Cabinet tomorrow night. It's an opportunity for us to have scrutinised a lot of things, to have asked questions, to get satisfactory answers and unsatisfactory answers, depending on your point of view. Can I stress firstly, I'm no apologist for this government. I'm as critical as anybody of Starmer's government. I'm not a member of the Labour Party, although I am a socialist. What I've tried to do with my amendment is to try and find a middle way that the majority of this council can support. I do favour strategic authorities. They are led by elected mayors who have quite a lot of powers, and devolution is about transferring money from Westminster to, for example, probably Winchester in our example. That's where the mayor would probably sit, but it's about transferring money. There's been figures of 30 million, etc. suggested. I've no idea what they are, but it's about trying to create what I think people from any political party, left or right, were suggested the successes created by Andy Burnham in Manchester, and now, when elected, Andy Street in the West Midlands, you know, who lost at the last election, but that was probably more to do with the previous 14 years of government rather than his own performance as mayor. So I have no problem, and I'm happy. My motion, my amendment also includes Bournemouth, Christchurch, and Poole, just in case there's a possibility of that. You know, that's just in case to cover that. I also addressed the exception issue, which the leader referred to. I am a strong advocate of maintenance of this unitary authority. I've been a member of it for 20 years. I was around when reorganisation happened in 1995, and I'm a strong supporter of it, and I will defend it to the hilt. In terms of the elections, well, I've got a vested interest in this because I want to retire. So is that a declaration of interest, Chair? I don't know. But one thing I will certainly do for all those who might get excited, there will not be a by-election unless I drop dead. If we, for instance, you know, we're forced into a position of postponing election, I will do the extra year. I don't want to, but I'll do it. I suspect that we're going to have no choice if we want to be on the priority programme, but to seek a deferral. This motion suggests that unless delaying a request to defer would prevent us being in the priority programme, then we shouldn't do it. I'd rather there weren't a deferral, much, you know, personally, and in democratic terms, there should be an election. I've only got a mandate for 4 years. And finally, Chair, I've put in a paragraph, just quickly if I could, address the issue that Councillor Palin from his cows referred to tie in the town, parish and community elections. If the Cabinet do decide to do that, and if we pass this motion, hopefully they will have cognizance. And finally, I do think we should express disappointment. I'm aware of how much time has been spent over a period when you're supposed to have a rest. Thank you, Chair. I hope a majority of this council will support my amendment and reject any others, and if necessary, I'll explain why you should reject the other ones later. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brodie. So I need to have that seconded. Would somebody like to second that? Councillor Ian Ward, do you want to speak or not at this point? Thank you very much. Now, so we now have to debate it. I am aware of an additional amendment, but what I want to suggest is that we debate this amendment, and then once we've debated this, we then come back and take your. Yeah, so we have to vote on that, of course. We have to vote on that, of course. And then once that's happened, we come back and take your debate. Is that
Chair, I can actually save a little time because at the appropriate moment, I will in fact withdraw my amendment.
Thank you very much for informing us of that.
Can I just ask, the first question you should probably ask is ask the leader if he accepts my amendment.
Does he accept him?
Thank you, Councillor Brodie. I'm happy to accept your amendment.
Thank you. So just give me a second. Give me a second, please. So essentially, that is an alteration then to the leader's motion, okay, which the leader has accepted. So therefore, we debate the original proposal.
Is there another amendment?
No.
It's another amendment. It's another amendment.
Yeah. So that leads me to your amendment. Councillor Spinks, that leads me to your amendment.
Say it again.
So what accepted by the leader, therefore we don't debate that yet at this time, but it now leads us to your motion.
Which I withdraw.
Thank you very much for that. Is that agreed by council? I need to agree that. Yeah. Right, it's quite complicated, so I just need to make sure. So that one's done with. So we now move on to debate the amendment. Is that right? The alternative. Yeah. We now move on to vote the alteration to the motion. See- So yes, we go to the debate now. Thank you.
A point of order first,
Well,
Chair.
it-
Just,
order.
yeah, just a very quick one. For members of the gallery who haven't seen the proposed amendment, have only seen the original papers online, would it be advised to have a copy of it or have the amendment read out?
It actually isn't a point of order, but it's a good point that you make. Thank you. It has to, are we moving into the debate? Yes, okay. So we're going to enter into the debate, okay? Councillor Robson.
Thank you, Chair. The amendment is a very, very, very mild improvement to the motion, but I will be voting against it. The question is, do we want to be on a priority programme for devolution, and are we ready to move at pace? How can we possibly say that we are ready when we are fundamentally unclear about so many issues surrounding a mayor? I think it's fanciful to think that a mayor who 90 to 93% of their electorate will be on the mainland will spend any less than 90 to 93% of the money on the mainland. We will end up with between 7 and 10%, and it depends whether Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole intend to get involved, because I understand they've got an expression of interest, which waters us down even further. No directly elected mayor is going to spend less than 90 to 93% on the mainland, or they will simply be voted out. Hampshire, I understand, are possibly going to have to form 2 unitary authorities with 2 separate leaders, plus a leader for Portsmouth, plus a leader for Southampton, plus possibly the leader for Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, plus our own. Our leader will have maybe 1 vote in 6. They will be outvoted every time if the mainland does not agree. These are the facts. It's not just devolution either. Power is going up. In the white paper, the mayor will get responsibility for strategic planning. That's the content of the island planning strategy. The mayor, based on the mainland, will decide how many houses we build on the Isle of Wight, and they will hear representations from Portsmouth and Southampton that they've built too many and we should build on the Isle of Wight. Coupled with a Labour government that wants to build 1.5 million homes in this parliament, we will lose all control over how many houses are built on the island, and we will be outvoted every single time. This is not just devolution, it is also centralisation. It will be deeply unpopular with the island public. No councillor in this room has any mandate whatsoever to impose a Hampshire-based mayor on our residents. There should be an election first, ideally a referendum about whether island residents want it. But I suspect if every councillor searches their soul, they know this won't be popular. They know islanders do not want someone from Hampshire making decisions for us, particularly on things on planning where we already have that power ourselves. So I would urge even those who think maybe a mayor might be a good thing. We can't possibly say we want to be on a priority programme. If it turns out we like the idea in the near future, we can join the next tranche of negotiations for mayor. But to do this at this pace, to fulfil a Labour government's bizarre timetable, I think is betraying the island public. We have no mandate for this whatsoever. None of us were elected on this platform, and it is a huge change.
Thank you very much for your comments. And next we have Councillor Medlin.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make four sort of brief points, really. One relates to what Councillor Robertson just said, is that, we need a referendum if we want to discuss having a mayor. We had a referendum and we had a very clear result. I think it was 2013, the election coincided with the referendum, and it was extremely clear that the island does not want a mayor. Very simple. So I thought we were supposed to follow referendums as, you know, as a popular will, as Democrats, that we ought to start listening to those decisions. Therefore, you know, I'm very, very critical of us now discussing having a referendum when less than 10 years ago, we already decided, or the public on the Isle of Wight decided, not to have a mayor. So we've had that discussion. Second thing is a bit personal, really, because I mean, I'm not particularly well at the moment, and I'm looking forward to standing down. And our last thing I want to do is postpone that for 2, 3, 1 year, whatever it is. And also, this is extraordinarily undemocratic to suspend parliamentary timetables, election timetables. And I find that extraordinary when it's completely unnecessary, as we're already in a unitary authority, that we should be contemplating postponing elections. There's absolutely no reason to do that. And if that happens, if that's decided tomorrow by the cabinet and it goes ahead, then I'll certainly be resigning on the 1st of May. Thirdly, I just want to look back at on a different subject, really. I look back at the Isle of Wight's history of sort of independence and government, and it's not very encouraging. I mean, the Isle of Wight's never had much luck as an autonomous region. Last time you can say that we were a separate kingdom, it was 530 to 686. We were invaded 3 times, twice by Wessex and once by Wolfe here, who laid waste to the Wight, apparently. So that wasn't very helpful. After that, we were under Hampshire, of course, under Wessex. And then in the 12th and 13th centuries, we had the de Redvers dynasty, which was the nearest we had to an independent Isle of Wight. But still, the Isle of Wight was a minor territory. It was the Duchy of Devon and the Duchy of Albemarle were the real powers, and we were just a nice place to live. So it was really not we weren't significant. And of course, once that was sold back to the Crown, we've been under the Crown ever since. And it seems to me a bit pointless. I mean, it's a little bit the fact that councillors tonight are discussing and debating a subject that they don't even have any control over, because it will be decided by the cabinet tomorrow. But that's the same case with the Isle of Wight. The Isle of Wight's never had a great deal of independence. It's always decided for us. However, my 4th point is we do have something we can do, and that is devolve to the parish and town councils. This council is unique in England. It's got 33 parish and town councils. No other county has that. It's an extraordinary level in the entire level that we can actually put public work things down to. So I would urge a return of assets to those councils that acquired them before they became part of the Isle of Wight Council.
Thank you, Councillor Midland. Appreciate your comments. Councillor Mosdale.
Thank you. I think within our group, I think, everybody is a free thinker within here and has different opinions on devolution, etc. I have to look at what's happened with the PCC. I have a huge amount of respect for Donna Jones, and actually, she has spent a huge amount of time on the Isle of Wight. She's done incredible things. I've seen police stations opened that have been closed for years that I never thought would happen. So I think it's really hard to say that because a mayor has so much of a percentage of an electorate, they're only going to spend that percentage on the island. Look at those PCC elections and the size of the area that votes for the Police and Crime Commissioner. And I think we can safely say that we've had more than our equal share of time spent on this island. Devolution is a massive thing, but devolution is massive. It's a huge decision for us to take, but we have been waiting for years for government to actually give us the settlement for us to keep our heads above the water. We are drowning. You only had to look at our budget presentation last night, and the deficit we are in is 16.4 million, I think, was coming across, and that was taking into everything we were given. It's not going to help us in the next year how we're going to actually make a balanced budget, but we've tried government, we've kept trying, and actually if there is another way of having a route to actually getting some more money, then I'd actually be interested in the conversation. And lastly, my conversation with the group leaders was we would have a place at the table as the Isle of Wight. 1 leader, 1 chief executive. Portsmouth, 1 leader, 1 chief executive. We would have an equal say of this devolution board. You know, you wouldn't be said, oh, you're the Isle of Wight, you've only got 140,000, you know, residents, we don't actually care about you. At that board, whoever is the leader and whoever is the chief executive, you know, would have an equal say to the others on that board. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Musdale, for your comments. Councillor Stewart next.
Firstly, I'm going to say thank you to the staff and to all the councillors who put in so much effort into trying to understand this thing which was dropped on us over Christmas. Other people will have their own say about why and how and all the rest of it, so I'm not going to say any more about it. What I do want to bring you back to is, as a former civil servant, the white paper is the definitive text for discussion, and it will form the form of basis for legislation. So it means that we actually have to look at that white paper. And the white paper came before my scrutiny committee because I pulled it there, and we discussed the economic impact, and we made we made one very, very solid point, which is that the white paper fails quite deliberately, probably because it's been written by somebody who doesn't even know where the Isle of Wight is, to not include ferries, specifically the only transport we have linked to the mainland. It is critical. My committee have put their recommendation forward, so I need to say no more about that. There are other issues that come up coming out of this white paper. The first one has been mentioned, which is housing. We have a draft island plan strategy. It's going through. Hopefully that will have some impact, but at the moment the white paper specifically refers to the government's current plans, which are over 1,000 houses a year here. So it's something which has to be addressed. Skills. I saw the skills plan. My committee saw the skills plan, the local skills improvement plan. It scarcely mentions the Isle of Wight. It has no idea of the problems that we face here, or the challenges we face, or in fact the opportunities. Finally, and it's my specific thinking, the island is what you might call an innovation cold spot due to the ferries, the geography, the lack of higher education, and all of those aspects. If there is a way for this mayoral authority, for this strategic authority, to ensure that the Isle of Wight is integrated to become part of the economic infrastructure of the Solent, then we might have an opportunity which we have not had for decades. It is a finely based decision on whether we can support this particular setup, but these are key points which you need to keep in mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Councillor Jarman.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Brodie in particular for his work on his revision here, and congratulate him on getting the number of working days that this allowed us to be perfectly correct. However, an amendment to that might be to take off the day of today and tomorrow and Friday, when there's and leave us with 13 days. It's therefore important to note that although this material was sent to the Isle of Wight on the 16th of December, it was kept from all the members until Christmas Eve, when it was distributed at 11:02. The result of that was that 6 of those 13 days were lost. Now, by my calculation, that's roughly half of the available working days. So something that was already difficult for us to deal with became almost insurmountable for people to deal with over the holiday break. The second thing I find very difficult to accept is that although I would trust implicitly Councillor Brodie, because I know with him I will get a straight answer to a straight question. We've asked a lot of questions this evening which have been very specific, to which we have not got specific answers. This is an extraordinary situation, and extraordinary measures demand extraordinary answers, and we have not got those. We've repeatedly tried to get them, but we have not. I'm still unaware if, as in Jim McMahon's request, he requires actually that we go back to him and we tell him whether we are going to give a clear commitment to delivering both reorganisation and devolution. And I've not got an answer to that. That leaves me in considerable doubt. I echo the conversation earlier about expenditure. I cannot see us as being 7% of an area getting much more than 7% of the funds. And I think getting 25% of them would be an extraordinary Trump-like negotiation. And I echo the comments of Councillor Stewart regarding the missing out of all the commentary on ferries. Also, if one reads the white paper, do a simple word search on it. The word Wight, Isle of Wight, does not come up once. It completely excludes references to us. We are ignored in this respect. Now, the final thing I would do is that I'm simply not sold by references to speculative figures for the distribution of speculative additional funds, some of which speculatively might come to our island. There are simply too many ifs and buts here, too much which is ill-defined or not defined at all. I find nothing of benefit to this in our island, and I support retaining the island as an independent unitary authority. We manage to have negotiations as we do at the moment. We should fight for what we are, fight for our right to additional funds, and continue to express ourselves independently. And I would ask this council not to support this motion, not to sell out our island. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Councillor Drew next.
Thank you, Chair. Personally, I think devolution could be a good idea, but not right now. I think we are too fragile. I think I would echo Councillor Robertson's point in terms of priority, that ultimately it is a question of priority, and this is something of an experiment. I think in terms of priority, what really occurred to me is what we were discussing at corporate scrutiny yesterday, which is the £20 million black hole. And then to compare that against one of the government spokespeople who went out in talking regarding devolution, regarding the scourge of e-bikes on pavements. They said that that would be one of the powers of mayors, and they considered that to be a bonus, that they could tackle the scourge of e-bikes. We have a much bigger problem, and I think ultimately we need to hang back a little bit. We don't need to join this programme at the moment. I think devolution is worth discussing and continuing to discuss, but ultimately it is another level of government, and it's something that is going to cause us a huge amount of expenditure and time, to say nothing of the democratic deficits, potentially. I think against that we have a very chimera-like set of issues with regards to funding. We've got the PwC estimation, which I would suggest is really not worth the paper it's written on. We've got a paper from several years ago before the current administration. It could be something in the region of 30 million for the entire region, compared to the 20 million black hole that we have. We made a resolution at corporate scrutiny to go after a 2.5 million grant that we were denied because government thought that we could raise council tax and fill that gap, which has been made by, amongst other things, national insurance rises. These are the types of things that we are playing against each other, the amount of money that we might get as opposed to where we stand. Planning committee, I think, is another significant point of this. A mayor would be able to call in decisions by planning. It's been my privilege in planning to see, and it's obviously one of the most controversial areas of council potentially, but to see colleagues coming together and agreeing on points, for example, not drilling the island, for example, looking at CO2. I mean, that wasn't before us, but it was certainly something that we discussed. Those would potentially be taken out of our control, and I think it is worth pausing and being able to consider what the implications would be if we're saying that a community like Fawley, and potentially a mayor that is going to be very much concerned about that community and votes there, it is something that could be taken outside of our control, and I think that is significant. I think there are a number of issues. Let us pause and come back to it at a later point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Drew. Councillor Garrett is on the list next.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to start by picking up a point that Councillor Robertson made, that I think he was expressing a concern about that we be run from Hampshire, and that he would object to that. I would object to seeing our unitary council powers shoved up to Hampshire as well, but that I think is not the case that's being put to us. I think we have very strong case as an exception to remain as a unitary council. What I do object to more so, it's not that I'm run from Hampshire, it's I'm run by faceless mandarins. Sorry, Nick, you've been one of those in the past. In Whitehall, Devolution is about bringing power closer to communities. And that's the most important thing that we should be focusing on. The opportunity to embed into our constitutional settlement devolved regional strategic authorities, I think, is one we must grasp. My father's Scottish. He lives in Scotland. Scotland's restored parliament is now so embedded that no one would argue against that. Okay, a regional strategic authority may not have the same sort of resonance as a Scottish parliament, but it is a chance here through what the government is offering to embed this change and bring power closer to the people. It's not an experiment, as Councillor Drew would suggest, in terms of a policy. It's not that many months ago that there was a Conservative government which was driving forward devolution. So that's a bit of a red herring, and I'm surprised that Conservative councillors might put that forward. The Minister is very clear this is about economic growth. We've all made that argument about that economic growth through devolution will mean powers to a regional strategic mayor and those who work with that person to have direction and control and regulation in some way over cross-Solent travel. And that can be accomplished without having to make it an exception because it's waterborne transport, and there's plenty of waterborne transport within England. I know governments are always cautious about making exceptions when they draft bills. We have to remember a bill will be drafted on the basis of this white paper, and we will need to argue strongly for stuff on the face of that bill that supports the Isle of Wight and anywhere that has similar struggles as we do with waterborne transport. I commend Councillor Brodie for his amendment. He has navigated a difficult pathway. He will know I have a sticking point with it. It is the issue of powers. I think it's 3 and 4 about postponement of elections. I note that we're being asked basically to advise Cabinet. I couldn't advise Cabinet as powers 3 and 4 suggest. So perhaps, Chair, we might have separate votes on powers 3 and 4, but otherwise we have to seize this opportunity. It may not be perfect, but if we lose it, we will not get it again for a generation.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. You've asked a question about separate votes. So I need to ask the monitoring officer about that. But you haven't actually posed any amendments to that. Just
Chair.
yeah, so we've still got a debate going on. When we come to the time to vote, we can revisit that question. Does that sound okay? I don't want to interject in the floor. So it's Councillor Brading next.
Thank you, Chairman. The one thing I care about in all of this debate about devolution is what's right for the island. You know, Island where I was born and bred and my residents. So we've got to remember that the end of is what the Isle of Wight residents get out of this. I'll have to say this is probably the most important decision that's come across this council in my 8 years as a councillor, because this will affect the future. It's 130 years of being an island, you know, looking after ourselves. So it's a really important decision. I don't envy the administration having to make such a decision. Thank you for the clarification as to why it's a cabinet decision it should be a 39 decision rather than a cabinet decision, but that's in the constitution. That's not right. So we are where we are. I think it's wrong to delay the elections this year because we are not reorganising. That's quite clear. You know, the others are reorganising to catch up with us. But as a unitary authority already, I personally don't see any reason why our electorate shouldn't have the right to vote for who they want to represent them, as stated 4 years ago. And end of our term, as Councillor Medland mentioned, the end of our term, we should be standing for re-election. Well, when I looked at this paper, I thought this is really strong arm, or dare I say, bully boy tactics by Labour. The timing of this was appalling. For us to have it dumped on us on Christmas Eve with a decision by tomorrow, I think it's absolutely disgraceful. It feels rushed. And for such an important decision like this, I don't think we should be rushed. We should take time, as said by a lot of people this evening, to go over and do this properly. Looking at the paper itself, Councillor Jarman said earlier, the Isle of Wight's not mentioned. We're not mentioned in the paper. Ferries have been totally ignored. I remember Councillor Quigley saying that he'd already spoken to Labour the new Labour minister about ferries, and ferries will be high priority for Labour. No, it's not. The ferries have been completely ignored by the government's transport bill, completely ignored by this white paper. But it is one of the biggest single problems on the island that we have. It's something that residents always talk about on the doorstep. The extortionate, poor service ferries is mentioned all the time. So I've tried to look at the paper, to read it and see what was written in the paper that would be a tangible benefit for the island. And I can't find any. When you look at the mayor system, it could work, but some friends of mine live in an area of the country that has a mayor, and the mayor comes up with harebrained schemes. They end up paying for it, and he gets a knighthood. It's quite amazing, really. But it's not what's in the paper that concerns me, it's what's not in the paper. There's so many things that aren't in the paper that I'd like answers to. So, this paper does potentially lose the Isle of Wight's identity, uniqueness, and really our control if it goes the wrong way. There's so many things not written in the paper that I would like to see in the paper. So that worries me quite considerably. So I'll listen to the debate, make my decision, but I'm leaning towards not supporting it at this point because it's rushed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brady. Councillor Price.
Thank you, Chairman. My issue with all of this is simply the delay in the elections. It's simply not necessary. The issue of getting us onto this priority programme, there's no guarantee we'll be on that programme. We could be a year or 2 years down the line. We could be then into another situation where, the council's going to be unable to make some of the decisions necessary because we'll be again in the election period. So what, we're going to delay it again another year? No one in this room at all is elected with this mandate to make this decision. I'm certainly not, so I won't be voting for it. However much I agree with Councillor Brodie's amendment, I won't be voting for it. None of us here should be voting for it. No one had this on their election leaflets. Let's not delay the election. Let's put it on our election leaflets, and the ones of us that are here afterwards and the new ones can make that decision then. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Councillor Price. Councillor Brodie's next.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to respond to a number of the issues that I've heard. Firstly, Councillor Medland, who's a very good ancient historian, clearly doesn't understand the political history of the island in recent years. The mayoral vote on the island, that was for a mayor just for the island, for this authority, was not in 2013, it was in 2005. That was 20 years ago, not the few years that he referred to. So let's get that right. Secondly, Councillor Mosdale is absolutely right regarding the fact we have a Hampshire and Isle of Wight Police and Crime Commissioner who, although I didn't vote for her, I'd never vote for her. I have to say I've been quite impressed with it compared to the predecessors with the way in which he's incorporated the Isle of Wight. Thirdly, and most importantly, Councillor Robertson MP refers to the Isle of Wight being isolated. I suggest that he and other people do some research, as I have done, into the constitutions of regional boards in existing strategic authorities. The Isle of Wight, if it negotiates well, can ensure things like weighted voting, vetoes on budgetary issues, etc., etc. I have researched those across the northeast, in Manchester, in the West Midlands, in Teesside, where there's still a Conservative devolved mayor. So you should research that. As I say, it's going to be at the strength of the negotiation. Ferries, they can be added in. It's been a red herring all the way through this. Ferries can be added in as part of the discussions afterwards. Claire Mosdale also referred to what is the biggest issue actually facing us. It's the 13.4 million black hole in our budget that we discussed for a long time at corporate scrutiny last night, although one of our members decided to walk out, which is interesting, and didn't want to worry about things like that. Moving on to why we should do it now. I don't want to be at the back of the queue. If you're at the back of the queue, you're going to have a system imposed on you. You're not going to negotiate about it. Once again, the Isle of Wight is going to be treated as Johnny come lately, because that's what we'll be. Let's be Johnny at the front of the queue for once in our lives, and let's try and get a share of the money that will come through devolution. This is about money from Westminster coming down to the Hampshire and Isle of Wight area, some of it coming to the Isle of Wight, and let's make sure we're party to that. In terms of Councillor Garrett's suggestion of separate votes, I have absolutely no problem with that. I am absolutely ambivalent about the whole election system. I understand his concern. What I've done is I've drafted a form of wording that gives the cabinet, because they're going to have to make the decision, it's not our decision, gives them an opportunity to either stick with what is probably the majority view or go with what they want to do. I would just say finally, if we don't get in the priority programme, our elections will still go ahead, Councillor Price. They will not be banned just because we're not in the priority programme. If we are in it, they will be cancelled. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Lever next.
Thank you, Chair. Two things are clear to me in relation to devolution and by its unfortunate timing, any government restructure. That's one, the island must retain a self-governing authority amidst the ensuing government restructure. And two, as others have alluded to, we need money and quick. Both of which, in my mind, can be helped by getting onto the priority track for devolution. And I say this as someone not yet wholly sold on this particular flavour of devolution, although I do see benefits to regional strategic views on the issues that affect us, namely crossing the Solent. Government's position is also clear that devolution is now happening, whether any one of us likes it or not. Yes, much of the detail is still to be ironed out, but this is about expressing intent, and what's clear is that it promises to bring additional and much needed funding. So for that reason, I think we must move forward with it. Additionally, I would think that having the Isle of Wight Council rubber stamped as an entity on a priority devolution deal should bolster our ask to continue in our existing capacity as an island authority during any restructuring to not undermine that priority deal. So for those two hugely important points, I see every reason to pursue devolution proposals as quickly as possible. Government have created unfair timescales and are non-committal on a certain requirement for entry to priority track. And I take Councillor Brading's point about feeling rushed. However, I'm comfortable that the report, now amended by Councillor Brodie, sets out our preferences and considerations very clearly, providing the room for Cabinet to discuss our path forward robustly and pivot should pursuit of the priority track require it. Therefore, I will support this report.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lever. Councillor Spink.
Thank you, Chair. I shall be quite brief because much of that which I was going to say has now been covered and nothing's gained by repetition. I will repeat one or two things, though, then that's simply this, that I don't see how we can take this decision, or at least an indicative vote, in favour of devolution when it's such an important matter, a significant change to the Isle of Wight way of government. Planning committee, it's unclear to me anyway, whether our planning committee on the Isle of Wight will continue, or whether decisions will be taken from the mainland over planning. And certainly, as Councillor Robertson has raised, the mayor will have strategic powers over strategic planning. So the point, and I've forgotten now who it was who made it, I think it may have been Councillor Robertson, that we could well become a dumping ground, quite frankly, for the housing requirement of the mainland would be catastrophic to this island. Now, I also take the view that if we're going to take these sort of risks, we do need a mandate or a consultation or a referendum. Now, we've had none of that. I think the public will be very angry, and rightly so, and it's extremely undemocratic to take a major decision in this way. But my final thing that I would, and I don't see this particular rush. I think it's unrealistic and would be bullied in it by this Labour, into it by this Labour government. I can't see why we can't have our elections. Those who want to campaign on a change of government, as it were, sorry, as a devolution, those who want to campaign on that can do so. Those who don't want to campaign on that can do so. The public can voice its opinion, and we can then apply to be on the devolution list, or apply simply for devolution, whether we can get on the priority list or not. Now, finally, I just want to say this. I don't know how this vote is going to go tonight, but whether it goes in favour of the motion or against the motion, I wholeheartedly urge the Cabinet to abide by the democratic decision of this full council. Whether it goes against what I want or for what I want, it seems to me that it would be quite wrong, given the lack of public consultation, for the Cabinet to take a decision against the democratic will of this council. And what does that say about the way, if that is done, this council is being run? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. So we have Councillor Blake next. We've spent a lot of time, we've had a lot of people making comments. If we could just try and pick out anything that you think is different, rather than us ending up in a big loop of repeating. So I'm not trying to curtail people, I'm just trying to help us to focus in a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. There is nothing in the white paper that says we have to delay elections if we are simply going for a mayor rather than the devolved powers rather than a reorganisation. And to that end, there should be no delay to elections. No powers should be allowed to leave this island. In the white paper, it mentions things like the mayoral precept. We have to ask where that's coming from. Is that an extra tax, or is that a proportion of our precept going away to them, and therefore the powers that go with that going to the mayor? The budget and sorry, this potentially could be a very slippery slope to something else. But this white paper only really presents a framework. There's not much meat to the bone at all. As Councillor Drew has said, there's wordings on things like having powers over e-bikes, and in fact in the paper it says there's you can have more control over your local railway stations. And what that means, I don't know. But there is a risk that down the line, the board growing of the management board growing from one elected member and the CEO from each councillor to be 2 elected members and the CEO, to 5, to 10, to 50. There's nothing against that. This could be a down the line. The priority programme is full, so there is no detriment to delaying the decision because we're not going to gain anything else from it. We might as well take this opportunity to have our elections, use that as our own public consultation. We're going to get out there and pound the streets and speak to our residents in order to get ourselves elected again. We can use that as a barometer of how public feeling is. Hampshire have said that the earliest this election of the mayor is May 27. So we have got 2 years to oversee that. We do need to, in the meantime, negotiate our exceptional circumstances, and then from there negotiate our way back into this deal if we are so minded. But for right now, I think the best thing we can do is step away from the table, assess our options, and then go back in if we are minded. For that reason, I have to vote against. And I repeat the point that many have made. There is no mandate that any of us have to vote for this.
Thank you very much, Councillor Blake. Councillor Redrup, Councillor Outlaw, and then we are finished as far as I can see. So sorry, Councillor Lilly, my apologies. Apologies.
I think we have to be in the real world. Labour has a massive majority. They can actually do what they like in this period, and they're pushing this through. I have searched my soul, and I discussed with my ward residents at their meeting on the 2nd of January. I've tried to go round and talk to people about this. And what I actually get is the issue of young people and the issue of older adults and health and social care, because that takes them across the water. We already have our health controlled across the water. That has moved, the powers of health have moved in the last sort of year, 2 years by stealth. Most people who need major operations have to go across that water, and are totally, the Isle of Wight has very little say within the integrated care board and health. Our young people, we don't have universities on the island, but we don't have the high levels of perhaps further education that are actually more available on the mainland. We actually cannot look at being isolated. And when I spoke to residents, they have actually said, we need to be at the table. We need to be at the table to discuss things. And I am of the understanding, we're talking about an expression of interest. Any final decision actually comes back to this chamber, and there will be consultation. It's not going to be a done deal. And in fact, the residents I've spoken to have asked to make sure that in any future mayoral strategic regional authority, that there is perhaps a deputy mayor for the ride. I will actually, I'm not a supporter necessarily of the commissioner, but the police commissioner did get Hampshire and the words Isle of Wight in the actual side, and actually has probably spent more time on the Isle of Wight than probably on Hampshire. So we can hard negotiate to actually get that side. If we let it go and we say we're going to go through the other means and ways, we're not going to exist at all. This way is we enable the Isle of Wight to actually be listened to and seen. So I fully support it, although I would like to vote separately on the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's Councillor Redrup now.
Thank you, Chair. I think we've heard several times about whether or not we have a mandate to vote on this. We've also heard several times about ferries being ignored, the Isle of Wight being ignored in the paper. And I'd like to ask all councillors if we also have a mandate to give up the opportunity to be at the table early on and get these things listened to, because if we don't take part in it and we wait, and it is tempting to wait because it's been sprung upon us so quickly over a period where we're trying to rest. But if we do wait, then we risk our colleagues, our neighbours across the water going ahead without us and making the decisions without us there. So I would also think that residents on the island would be very upset with us for not taking that opportunity. So either we do or we don't. Do we have a mandate for it? There's lots of things that spring up in the course of the time that you're a councillor that didn't come up before the elections. And it's our responsibility, it's our job to make the best call on what the island needs. And just this morning, I was reading 2 letters from people in emergency housing about how traumatic that experience has been for them. And I see all the time the problems of us being an island. Unfortunately, that water causes us so much problems. I see it affecting our businesses, I see it affecting our economy, and I see it affecting young people and their ability to go and experience the rest of the UK, let alone the world. It's a barrier, and it's a barrier that we can only address by working with our neighbours. So do we tonight vote to take that opportunity to have a strong voice at the start of the conversation, or do we vote to bury our head in the sand and wait for something to happen later? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, councillors. Councillor Outlaw.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Councillor Mosdale referred to the time we've been waiting for an island settlement, and I know this has been something which has been talked about throughout the time that I've been a councillor. But the idea that this devolution will deliver some form of island settlement is pie in the sky. It's conflating two different things. This has nothing to do with a budget settlement for the Isle of Wight. A number of councillors have referred to this as enabling an additional funding, as has the leader, and there is no evidence of that in the white paper. I suggest that too is wishful thinking. The thing we can probably expect from this is a dilution of the funding that we get today, and any powers that go to the mayor or to this devolution process that are currently held by the Isle of Wight, that money will go there. Councillor Garrett has suggested that if we don't grasp this opportunity, we'll lose it for a generation. But there's no evidence of that. That's not the case. This is about whether we go with the priority programme or not, as simple as that. To me, this is the only good reason for us to join this priority programme is for the enabling of the cancellation of the May elections. Supporting it is like turkeys voting to cancel Christmas. I won't be voting for this, and I don't believe any councillor in this chamber should. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're really getting close towards the end. I'll come to you. Councillor Dave. Door.
Well,
it looks like I'm here.
I was going to, it doesn't matter. Who did, never mind, that's not going to work. Right, I was going to talk on this, but it's been so much interesting and engaging discussion. I've banged out a bunch of notes. They're in no particular order, so please oblige me. There is a lot to unpack in this, and frankly, so much information to absorb with little ready information from the government. It's almost a blind playing cards too. But Matt brought up the conversation of mandate. My mandate is to represent residents for the duration of my tenure. But this is just another part of that gig. Everything gets thrown at you. You have to get your head down and crack on. So I've got no issue with that. There is a fragility, especially as we are about to go into the committee system in May. Will that have an impact on this? May do, may not. Also, there are no guarantees that if the election's delayed in May, we would get them in 2026. What if this process goes breasts aloft? What then? We run over. Maybe it goes to May 2027. Do we trust Labour government? Of course we don't. Of course we don't. This is as sly as it comes. It's sly. Shut up. This is outrageous how this has been delivered in such a short time frame. But anyway, there's nothing I can see in the white paper that specifically demands or mandates this council to suspend elections, nor does it suggest that by having the elections in May of this year, would it delay or compromise any such inclusion into the fast track programme? It expects us to, that's the wording, but it doesn't demand. It may put pressure on capacity, but we had an election for a worldwide pandemic. We were all sat in Medina Theatre with masks on as COVID engulfed us. So long as we have capacity, we should dare to endure and crack on with the elections. People are expecting it, and we should move forward with that. I do have reassurance as an exception, and I place faith in Councillor Jordan to fight that corner. I think he's the best placed person to do that, and it's clear on Jeff's amendment at number 2. Absolutely, it's very well written. We're all on borrowed time in this chamber. I consider representing my home village an absolute privilege. To fly the Armed Forces flag on behalf of the council is an honour, but both are not an entitlement. They are gifted to me on a temporary basis by the residents of Binsted and Fishbourne. John, if you're not happy with it, you can always cause a by-election and resign. That's how it works. I will be keeping going if that's what has to happen. That is my pledge and I stand by it. The amendment gives Cabinet the decision maker in this, and that's who they are. They are the decision maker. It's not us. A degree of flexibility. And I take comfort in the fact that the final decision will come back to us in this very chamber. It is a get out clause. John, again, I'm not going to take the mickey this time, wax lyrical about the island's history. It's there in point 2. Seek to defend and help government to understand the particular geography and historic status, yada, yada, yada. Imagine how history will record us. Chair, if you'll oblige me, 30 seconds. Will record us if we don't take this. On the face of it, it's a massive challenge and it's all over the show. That's the government, but they're going to impose this anyway. As my parachute instructor said to me, it's better to jump than be pushed.
Parachute.
Carl, I'm done. We're all good. We should engage.
Parachute instructor across the line. Thank you very much.
Don't knock it till you tried it, Carl.
No, I mean, you don't know that I haven't.
But thank you, Chair.
Anyway, so I'm really thinking about where we are now in terms of time, etc. So Councillor Ward, really quickly.
Thank you, Chairman. I've sat here this evening and listened to arguments backwards and forwards. I was born on this island. I was brought up on this island. When I was a kid, this was a booming island. Tourism, you know, they were flocking here. Times have changed. The world has changed. Times have changed. And I look at, you know, the island now, and we badly need regeneration. We badly need investment. And people say, what right have we got to accept this? And I say, what right have we got to reject it? You know, you ask any of our residents, they want investment, they want regeneration. You know, they don't want derelict hotels. I've got to say, no, I know that. And what right have I got to say, I'm sorry, you've got to keep them? No, I think this is a golden opportunity that we cannot turn down. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm coming to Vanessa finally, before we move on.
Yes, listening to it all, we are an island carved out by a glacier. The water is a tremendous moat and causes us problems. We all know that. I think my biggest problem, I think the idea of devolution is brilliant. My one big act I don't like is about a mayor. What the devil do we need another layer of bureaucracy for, and who is going to pay for it? And I immediately think of the NHS and their stratas of bureaucracy, and what happens? Everything begins to fall apart. It gets trapped in offices. So that is my one big thing that I object to any form of mayor. Thank you.
So we've had a really, really good debate all around, lots of different opinions, lots of different attitudes, lots of different feelings. Obviously, in the chair's role, I have to keep separate from that. As the ward councillor, I just want to say a couple of things as ward councillor. You know, we've talked about a potential letter going to government, and the question that comes into my mind is what's in that actual letter that goes out through the front door, whether if it accepts or not. So that's something that I would hope that would be shared if that was to be the eventual outcome of that with all councillors. So from my perspective, I've been here before with devolution in terms of the NHS and seeing what's happened in the NHS and how we've had absolutely no control and no influence and find it really difficult to negotiate. I know it's a different kind of structure and a different kind of organisation, but I've found that incredibly difficult. For me, it's about how this has been rushed in. We can see just how divided people are within the chamber. And for me, there simply is not enough information being provided from this here. So that is my own opinion. I've said earlier what I think about the government's timetable, and I'll say it again, disgusting in terms of the speed in which they've employed this. That is my feeling about that, because it sets people against people at a time when we've been so busy. Now, again, I want to reiterate to our officers, thank you so very much whatever the outcome is, and particularly, the cabinet as well. There's been a lot of people having to do a lot of extra work that should not have been the case now. Okay, so I'm now done with that. So I give the right to reply firstly to Councillor Stevens, who reserved the right to speak. Would you like to speak or not? Thank you very much for that. Yeah. That's okay. That's okay, Councillor Stevens. So the right to reply lies with our leader, Councillor Jordan. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, sorry, no, that's not the case.
Yes, it's accepted the amendment.
But it becomes
let's just take some
motion, I think.
I think let's just take some clarification. I have been asking the question throughout, and I was told clearly that it was the leader.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. What happened here, according to my understanding, is that Councillor Jordan accepted Councillor Brodie's motion, so that becomes an alteration, and that's the alteration. So if it's the alteration, then it goes to Councillor Jordan as his motion. So therefore, he has the right of replying. Now, had there been a vote on the motion, the amendment itself, then Councillor Brodie. Yeah.
You're right. You're correct. Sorry.
Thank you for accepting that. I appreciate that, Councillor Jordan.
Thank you, Chair. Jeff, I'm sorry. I was looking forward to
You'll
hearing.
do it far better.
So, and I'm going to make just a couple of corrections. I didn't make a note of everything that was said there. I'm being very careful how I speak without opinion. Bear with me. But there were a number of things as they came up just sent me into a bit of a spin, really, because some of the comments are just wrong. They're wrong. They're not opinions, they're wrong facts. So mayoral election, if you can remember, I can't remember who said them, I didn't make a note. Mayoral elections are in 2026, that's set out. We cannot, if we choose for whatever reason to leave the devolution process with our three partners, and they continue without the Isle of Wight, as they could.
It's the chair. Please let the leader reply, please. I understand that it's easy for you to jump in, but the leader needs to reply.
What we can't do is negotiate ourselves back into that arrangement. Yeah. The plan for unitaries is 2027 and 28. That's listed. The strategic board won't be able to change its membership because the devolution deal that is done as a signed document will include those governance parameters. They won't have the powers to change them. Funding is guaranteed by government. If you, what was guaranteed, I'll read it to you. In fact, I sent this document round to group leaders along with the letter of the minister. I don't know if group leaders sent that on, but it was sent to group leaders. In part of the funding, this is a question and answer to the minister on December the 17th. It's part of the reason why the letter on the 16th was not circulated, because on the 17th, a meeting with the minister and the question and answers that I am going to quote this piece about funding for you, which came from the minister, arrived 2 days later on the 21st, on the 19th, I'm sorry. It says, although you've had it, as part of the white paper, we've published a new enhanced devolution framework, expanding the deepening powers available to mayors and strategic authorities. The government will work with local authorities and strategic authorities to consider the best way to provide resource funding by the local government finance settlement. The new burdens doctrine will continue to remain in place for any responsibilities on local strategic authorities. The new framework also includes integrated funding settlements for mayors that have a strong track record. Where a strategic authority takes on powers which are currently funded outside the local government finance settlement or integrated settlements, MHCLG, that's the government department, will work with the relevant department or organisations to explore direct funding through these routes. Outside of the integrated settlements, the devolution framework also commits to a simplified funding landscape for mayor and foundation strategic authorities, such as consolidated settlement for strategic authorities covering local growth, place, housing and regeneration funds. The government are guaranteeing additional funding. The idea that it's wishy-washy in the sky is countered by what government and the minister actually says, and the documents are in the possession of group leaders. Mayors, well, there's good examples of mayors around the UK. Manchester and Birmingham, Councillor Brodie mentioned it earlier, making some fantastic improvements in their communities and localities. And finally, I guess, mayors on devolution. There are different devolution levels. There are 4 levels. And you can have a devolution agreement without a mayor, if you wish. It's level 2. Now, what level 2 devolution does is give you a fraction of the powers and a fraction of the funding. And so by default, if you accept that you're going to ask for devolution or priority on devolution, the attractive level is level 3, leading to, if you do very well in class, thank you, you could apply for level 4. There's substantial funding and substantial power. So thank you for that opportunity, Chair.
Thank you so much.
Genuine point of order. What level are we voting on today?
We are intending to ask government for a level 3, which is a mayoral devolution deal.
Chair, sorry. I asked a question at the start of things, having further considered what is now the substantive. I withdraw that question as to whether there is a need for separate votes. I wouldn't be seeking separate votes now. So, and if you were to provide them.
But I'm going to ask that we have a named vote on anything we have from now on.
Okay. I need to. Yep. Accepted. Thank you. So earlier I was asked about whether if we might take this one by one. So I am kind of looking round to see whether people want to do that or whether if they just want to go straight for the vote.
Straight to the vote.
Straight for the vote, straight for the vote. Everybody happy with that? Okay, so we won't do a separate on that as was discussed earlier.
Chair, can I, as I advised earlier, if we are now moving to the vote?
We are.
I have listened to the debate, but I will not be participating in the vote. So I will be recusing myself, and I would like it minuted that I have left the meeting prior to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andre, and thank you for attending. If you just give a second.
Chairman, following the advice that we have received from the monitoring officer, I think as members of the cabinet, we need to do exactly the same. We've listened to the debate. We've heard what members have said, but it would be unwise for us to stay here for the vote. And besides, I don't like, so I'm going to be withdrawing the vote.
It's a decision for each of you to make as to what now is the opportunity to leave if you wish to do so. And I'm happy for people to remain as well. Councillor Brodie.
Chair, I think it's important for the record, for the audio and for the minutes, that we know who the 3 are who left. And I will name them now: Councillors Andre, Councillor Fuller and Councillor Jones-Evans. However, the other three cabinet members who are present tonight, councillors Jordan, councillors Bacon and councillor Stevens, have chosen to remain. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that clarity. So here we go, okay? We are moving to the vote. And it is a named vote, which, of course, Francis will call out the names and you can vote for, against or abstain.
Are you ready, Chair?
Um,
Chairman? Okay, councillor Bacon.
Thank you.
For, against, abstain.
I've chosen to remain in the room, but I've deliberately not spoken during this debate and I am abstaining from the vote.
Councillor Christensen.
For.
Councillor Dorr.
For.
Councillor Downer. Councillor Lever.
For.
Councillor PC Wilcox.
Here.
No.
Councillor Stevens.
As councillor Bacon said, I'll remain for the vote, but
Abstain.
Abstain. Councillor Garrett.
For.
Councillor Lilly. Councillor Sarah Redrup.
For.
Councillor Stewart.
For.
Councillor Adams. Councillor Beston.
Against.
Councillor Blake.
Against.
Councillor Brady.
Against.
Councillor Drew.
Against.
Councillor Mosdell.
For.
Councillor Nicholson.
for.
Councillor Oliver.
Against.
Councillor Outlaw.
Against.
Councillor Price.
Against.
Councillor Quirk.
Against.
Councillor Ray Redrup.
Councillor
Councillor Ray Redrup.
must make a decision.
For, against or abstain. Councillor Robertson.
Against.
Councillor Ward. Councillor Brodie.
For.
Councillor Jarman.
Against.
Councillor Medland.
Against.
Councillor Spink.
Against.
Councillor Jordan.
I'm abstaining on legal advice.
Councillor Churchman.
Against.
Councillor Love.
Against.
Yeah? 16-2, yeah? Three.
No, it's not. No. 18. Sorry.
And so the democratic voice of the council has been heard and the message is received. For 12 votes, against 16 votes, abstentions 3, and we recognise that some of the councillors have been advised not to vote on legal advice.
Yeah,
So council.
yeah, point of order, please. Can we have some clarification now? We've now had 2 hours, 49 minutes discussion on this issue. Had a vote that was quite close and could reasonably be construed to have been the other way if it hadn't been for the advice of the monitoring officer. Now, in my view, that makes that a uncertain decision of this full council. I'm afraid to say, because of the legal advice of the advice provided to councillors who, in my view, should have exercised their vote. That's why they're expected to be here. They have let down.
Councillor Brodie, Councillor Brodie, no, thank you, Councillor Brodie. No, Councillor Brodie, I think that the advice was given prior to the meeting. That is something that could have come up through the questions, etc., earlier on. The point is that this council has now voted, and so that is something, if you wish to take up with, you know, for discussion afterwards, you are more than welcome and free to do so. But this council meeting has now voted, and the meeting is now. And thank you for everybody.
Chair, can I have some
It's now-
further clarification?
Is not at this point. It's now closed.
Right. Okay, Chair, you've closed the meeting with a legitimate question regarding